Good afternoon, everyone. How are you doing?
Good.
Good. Glad to hear. My name is Dr. Kalfani. For those of you who don't know, I'm the director of the Africana Institute here at Essex County College and a professor of sociology. Wear a couple other hats around the world. But the point is that we're here reflecting on something that we do every single year. We started this with a lecture from a professor at Lincoln University, an old friend of mine, Zizwe Dr. Poe. And he gave a lecture on Nkrumah, and his lecture was so powerful it inspired me to say that we've got to do an annual lecture on Pan-Africanism, on the contributions of people of African descent to the world. And so this is an apropos time for us to have a discussion here today, a lecture, a dissertation, if you will, on Thomas Sankara. And the beauty of that is that Sankara gave us so much to think about. And this is the 30th anniversary, 1987 now, looking at, this is 2017. So this is an apropos time for us to have a reflection on something that enables us to take the understanding to the next level, but also to take a critique as to where we are as people of African descent and how do we move forward. So the Africana Institute is a center that basically takes an opportunity to look at why and how we as African people navigate the spaces that we navigate in the ways that we do, and what are some of the challenges therein. That is, that what are the ways that we can better understand each other if we come from the islands, from the continent, from the Americas, wherever it is that we come from, how do we get to a place where we can better work together, better understand each other, know our histories and cultures, and the values of what we bring to the table. And so then, I've been the director now since 2006, and we've done a lot of things over that time. And I think that we want to look at how in the next 10 years, what is it that we do moving forward? How do we transform the spaces around us for the next 10 years? What are the types of discussions we need to bring to the table? What are the types of ideas and people we need to bring to the table so that we can further both the dialogue and further the agenda of what we do? And so then I say that in the context of all the things that we have coming up next, right? So we have some powerful things coming up. We have a powerful exhibition that I want you all, when we leave here today, to take an opportunity to go downstairs and look at in the gallery. It's by an artist. I'm going to make sure everybody has a copy of this. His name is Wabembe, or Carl Whiters. And that program is an amazing one. I'm asking you to spend some time because you will be entranced once you get into it. And then we have African Spirituality Conference coming up on March the 18th. And then we have our annual Pan-African Drum Fest, which is going to be in May. And then we're taking a trip to Africa. We're going to Egypt this year. We've been to Ghana and South Africa, so this year we're going to Egypt, and who knows where the world is going to take us next time. But we invite you all to come and join us so that we begin to push the envelope in terms of what it means to be African. We're going to take some trips to the islands. We're working on those, getting those things together, islands, South America, so that we can get other types of experiences about African people. And also we're working right now on a trip, probably at the end of April, beginning of May, to go down to the African American Museum that's in DC. If you have, how many people have been to the museum? So those of you who have not been, I guarantee you get to the museum, you'll see it's absolutely amazing. Now there's some people who have questions and problems about it, and I understand that, and that's appropriate, we should, but we also need to have those examples to be able to go to and talk about, right? If you go there, there's a museum, beautiful museum in Detroit. There's a great museum in the Blacks and Wax Museum in Maryland. All these places we need to be visiting. We need to talk about and experience. And there's a slave memorial in New York City. If you have, how many people have been to that? To the African Burial Ground in New York City? Still only a handful. These are places that we have to go because they speak volumes to the presence and the relationship between Africans in the diaspora and Africans on the continent and Africans in the islands. We need to make sure that we see that this Pan-Africanist idea is one that brings together our ideas, our thoughts from a political, cultural, and spiritual level. And so when we have that synergy, it takes us to the next level. So I want to do that. Also, typically I would pour libations. But I have somebody else's water here. I have to go get some water for them. But we want to make sure that we pay tribute to our ancestors, those who came before us. That here, when we think about Pan-Africanism, that the beginnings of Pan-Africanism, we understand started with some of the early dialogues in 1900. So if you look back in 1900, there was the first Pan-Africanist conference held by Henry Sylvester Williams, who was from Trinidad, in London. And before that, you had the Pan-Negro movement, right? So you had these ideas about Pan-Africanism that are not new, they're long, and that we have seen lots of development and iterations of it. And so now we're talking about how do we move that dialogue to the next level. And I think you have some great folks who are here who are going to tell us about that. And so we're going to come back to that, but I just want to take a moment of silence for all those ancestors who've gone before us. We want to do our traditional libations because we're a little behind schedule. But we take a moment of silence for all of our ancestors, those who made it possible for us to be here. Thank you. We paid special tribute to our brother Thomas Sankara. So him, we especially want to uplift the energy and spirit, and there's no way to better do that than to have his brother here. So let's give his brother a round of applause. And I'm not going to do all the introductions. I have a wonderful student who works in my office, Fatimata Diallo. She's going to come and she's going to introduce them both in English and in French. And so that we're going to have an opportunity for folks to really get a chance to, regardless of what language you speak, to understand who's here, why they're here, and we're going to take it from there. So without further ado, let's give her a round of applause.
Good morning. Good morning. I would like to speak on Fulani.
Okay. Give me some words.
Jamwan. You see, I have Fulani here. My name is Fatmata Diallo. I'm studying with Dr. Kafani on Africana Institute. I would like to introduce Paul Sankara and thank him to accept to come in Essex County College. Je vais introduire Paul Sankara et puis lui dire merci d'accepter de venir. Parce que célébrer Sankara, Sankara, ce n'est plus le Burkina seulement, c'est l'Afrique et c'est le monde entier. Donc, merci beaucoup. Et je profite d'ici pour dire que nous, les Africains, on ne doit pas dire que je viens du Burkina ou on est Africain. Et c'est ce qui est important, comme le disait le président Sankara. I would like to say thank you to Paul Sankara and say, like Thomas Sankara said 30 years ago, we not say Burkina or Africa, no, we're just African. And this is the key, because if you say I'm coming from Burkina, I'm going to just think about Burkina, I'm not thinking about Africa. The problem we have here is Africa. And we have brothers here, African American here. We're all the same coming from. The difference between us is the boat. Yeah, where the boat stops, that's all the difference. And I would like to thank my friend, my brother, Dr. Nyaka. Thank you for coming. He doing very wonderful things on Washington, D.C. I went there a few times last year. Yeah. And he's doing a very great job there. And he was in New York last year too. Merci, Dr. Nyaka. Merci pour tout. La patrouille la mort. C'est ça qu'il y a de Burkinabé ici. Merci, je vous remercie. Applaudissez pour Dr. Nyaka. Je vais inviter Dr. Nyaka à prendre la parole. I would like to invite Dr. Nyaka to come give me some speak about Thomas Sankara. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kafani. And I did not know that you were doing so many great things. And when I came here and I saw the institute, I was very pleased, and I commend you for your work. And because there are not many people like you in the black community who care so much about Africa that they translate the vision into the curriculum and things there too. I was in your class and it was lively, and I can see that you are empowering the youth, and I'm very proud to be here, and thanks to you, and thank you very much. I want to thank Fatimata Diallo, a friend, a sister, and she's a part of a group of people. We've been working since 2007, and we launched a series of Pan-African conferences in DC, and with the Sankara family, Paul, Pascal, Pauline, Lydie, and then Fatimata in New York here with Ba, Boubacar, Aruna Sawinidi, and Yannick Zagre, and then Bukari Salogo, and some other brothers. And I'm very, very glad, to know that she helped put this program together, and I could not refuse. And I'm glad to be here with Paul. As I mentioned his name, we've been doing great things, a very humble person. And then also, I would like to thank your name, you. Peter. So Peter is like, he's one of those white men, everywhere African gather, Peter is around. And so we represent the Social Workers Party. So when we do take conferences in DC, in the rain, in the snow, you're going to see Peter. So I was very surprised to see him here. I said, oh, Peter, everywhere we go, I see you. He said, yes. And this is what we call somebody who is dedicated to the cause of justice and to the cause of freedom. And you represent the Socialist Workers Party, which is one of the organizations that participate in the conferences that we put together. The other groups are Friends of the Congo, the All African Revolution People's Party, All African Revolution People Party, GC, and Pan-African Community Action, Answer Coalition, and the Institute for Policy Studies, and many other groups. And we've been doing that because we believe as Africans in Pan-Africanism and also in internationalism. And so we launched the Thomas Sankara's conferences in 2012. And so we did the 5th edition last year. And then in 2014, we launched the Cuba, Africa, and the World conferences. And then we did the 2nd annual series on January 7. We paid tribute to Fidel Castro for his legacy. And as you know, and I will talk about that in a few, Fidel Castro was one of the people who influenced greatly Thomas Sankara. And that day the weather was not that good, but I was so shocked to see people coming from Chicago. Peter again and his people came from New York. Some other people are coming from Philadelphia. Great moment, and then we want to continue that, and that's why I'm so glad to see what Dr. Kalfani is doing here in New Jersey. Having said that, when Fatima and Dr. Kalfani asked me the topic I wanted to discuss, this is the topic I gave them. That I want to talk about the role and the place of Thomas Sankara in the revival of Pan-Africanism. Or I want to be able to talk about the role, the place, and the contribution of Thomas Sankara in the history of Pan-Africanism. It is known, I'm not going to take too much time. Maybe if I can do that in 15 minutes, I will be satisfied with myself. So before talking about Sankara contribution, we need to talk about briefly about Pan-Africanism. Dr. Kalfani said the word was coined in 1900 by Sylvester Williams. And again, before him, some people were talking like Dubois, they were talking about Pan-Negroism. So Pan-Africanism is an idea, an ideology, a vision of unity of Africa and its people, and for self-determination. And the movement, there were several factors that led to the creation of the movement. I can talk about a series of systems of oppression. One, and then a series of movements of nationalism, and then these are the two major factors that contributed, to the rise of Pan-Africanism. Not to go too far, slavery captured those blacks, taking them from Africa, and then when America, after the Declaration of Independence here, and the Americans wanted to get rid of the British yoke, and then this was not an opportunity, for blacks, because after America became independent, slavery continued, and blacks were still suffering different types of system of oppression and racism, and then the history of blacks. And it was in that context that some people say, you know what, we need to try and come with an ideal of unity of those who are enslaved. And then this is how, with the abolitionist movement, people were going to advocate, that vision, to bring black people together. Slavery. Later on, colonialism. With the Berlin Conference in 1884, 1885, Africa was partitioned. And then again, after slavery, the Europeans were going to go to the continent of Africa in the age of nationalism. I'm going to talk about that in a few. And in the age of the Industrial Revolution, they needed the raw materials, and they were fighting for power. They needed, and then again, they went to different parts of the world, Asia, and then Africa, here, like in the Americas, and then they put into place that system that lasted roughly 100 years, while slavery lasted at least 300 years. It was in that context that like several generations of African freedom fighters were going to organize and then conquer the independence of Africa. And then we have from west coast of Africa to the central part of Africa to the east coast of Africa to the northern part of Africa. Africa was colonized, and our forefathers, they struggled for the independence of Africa. And then one person who played a great role, like in that struggle, not because he was the greatest, but because of the significance of his struggle and the contribution to the history of Pan-Africanism, was going to be Kwame Nkrumah. He became prime minister. He attended the Congress of Manchester in 1945 under the leadership of Du Bois. He studied in America, and then went to London. He participated in different groups, for freedom and justice, and particularly for blacks and Africans. And after the Congress of Manchester, that was dedicated to the decolonization of Africa, Nkrumah went back to Ghana, and then in 1947, and then he was a part of the United Gold Coast Conventions. And this is how, later on, when he was going to come out of this party, he created his own party. He was going to become Prime Minister of Ghana. He won the election while he was in prison. He advocated Pan-Africanism. His success rise to power was like a stunning penetration of Pan-Africanism on the continent of Africa. Now, of course, later on we have the Apartheid System in South Africa, where the European landed, particularly the Dutch, in 1652. And then for 342 years, they put into place another system of oppression, slavery, racism, and discrimination for more than 300 years. And several generations struggled again with the spirit of unity of blacks and spirit of unity of those who believe in justice and freedom, be black, Asian, or white. And this is how Mandela came out of prison February 11, 1990. 4 years later, April 27, 1994, Mandela became the first black president of South Africa. So you will see all those movements contributed, to consolidate Pan-Africanism. I mentioned nationalism. There was another set of factors, the revolutions. We have the French Revolution, 1789. The American Revolution with the Declaration of Independence, 1776. And then we have the Haitian Revolution, this revolt of the slaves here on this part of the continent. And then all those contributed, to give a sense of pride and dignity, particularly the Haitian Revolution. And this is how, in that context of nationalism, with the unity of Italy, 1870, 1871, the unity of Germans with Pan-Germanism, 1870, 1871, with the mission of the Slavs under the rulership of the Ottoman Empire, the Pan-Slavic mission. So it was in that environment of words that end with ism, pan-Germanism, and then pan-Slavism, that our forefathers decided, to coin, particularly Sylvester Williams, that word Pan-Africanism. Now, I just gave you a brief overview. And of course, there are different people who were part of the movement that people do not think about. Somebody like Dr. King. I was at the swearing ceremony of Dr. Nkrumah, 1858 in 1957. And when he came back and he wrote, he gave a sermon, The Birth is online, The Birth of a New Nation. In that sermon, Dr. King was talking about how the independence of Ghana and the spirit of Pan-Africanism contributed or helped, the consolidation of the civil rights movement here. Malcolm X also, of course, he played a greater role, to try and bring, people together, from the continent of Africa, and people here created the organization of the African American Unity. Now, there's one thing that is one of the things that I want to talk about, very important. It is the patterns of Pan-Africanism. Pan-Africanism is one of that movement which experiences peaks and then valleys. Of course, with what I just shared with you, we can imagine the beginning of the 20th century, and particularly after 1945, there was like a growing momentum, in favor of Pan-Africanism. But it has not always been like that. Sometimes the movement experienced valleys. And then after the Congress of 1927, many people thought that Pan-Africanism was dead. Until the Italians who were defeated twice by Ethiopia, 1887 and 1896, at the battles of Dongali and the Battle of Adwa, and they attacked Ethiopia 1935, and then way before this World War II. It was in that moment people were so shocked to see Ethiopia, the uncolonized, the beacon of dignity and hope of Africa, being attacked by fascist Italy. This is how many people organized, and later on, France and England, a part of the League of Nations, they were going to help free Ethiopia. This is how Pan-Africanism was going to experience and welcome a new momentum. And then after that, 1960, in the midst of the decolonization of Africa, people were fighting. People like Nkrumah wanted the immediate unification of Africa. People like Félix Houphouët-Boigny from Ivory Coast, they wanted a gradual unification of Africa. The gradualists won, and then Nkrumah was defeated, and they created the Organization of the African Unity in 1963. And then the movement was going to experience a long moment of hibernation. And this is how we can see the significance, the importance of the contribution of Thomas Sankara. Because I remember when I was going to school, in high school, if you were talking about Pan-Africanism, people will look at you and say, you know what, you may be crazy. Because many of those people who did that, they were either killed, in prison, Mandela was in prison. So it was in that context that somebody rose to power in Burkina Faso in 1983. And then when he came to power in 1983, and he was in power for 4 years. I'm not going to go into detail how he came to power. Some people thought that it was a coup d'etat. No, it was a mass movement. And then later on he became president for 4 years. So what do we know about Thomas Sankara? He promoted self-sufficiency. And then in 4 years, Burkina Faso, people were able, to feed themselves. And he has one of his favorite quotations, whoever feeds you controls you. And this is how he educated the people of Burkina Faso, to grow food to eat, not to rely. Somebody asked him one day, what is imperialism? As you look at your plate, the rice you eat, and coming from overseas, that is imperialism. And then people understood. The public works gave the desire to his people to come together with less capital to build roads, railroads, wells, and different other things. He made them understand the importance to fight against the desert. They were planting trees. Today, it is a part of the culture in Burkina Faso. Gave away the luxury cars, and then it prevented, the officials, to take, to buy like those expensive fares, to travel. So it did all those things, and then this is how people realized that it was not just talking, but his deeds, his speeches, his works, and then his work contributed in order to give like a boost to the Pan-African movement, as he was fighting also against what? The African debt. Reclaiming, like I said in the beginning, the Cuban Revolution, because country or death, we will overcome or we will win. It is a sentence or a motto, a slogan used by Fidel Castro. So he claimed socialism and then implemented a socialist ideology when, again, in the context of the Cold War, when Castro and Cuba were still suffering heavily from the blockade of the embargo, he was brave enough, to say, what, we are claiming, the Cuban Revolution. So this is Thomas Sankara. Now, after what I did, I just gave you a historical overview of Pan-Africanism, and I demonstrated the importance and the significance of his contribution to Pan-Africanism. Now I'm going to talk about the lessons that we can learn from his leadership. Thomas Sankara he renamed his country in an effort to decolonize the mind and the space. Upper Volta. Volta is the river, right? And then Upper Volta. And so when the Europeans went to Africa, they will see shrimps, and then they gave the name to Cameroon. They went to Ivory Coast, they saw some elephants there, Ivory Coast there. And then they went to Ghana, people since the 15th century, 14th century, they've been taking gold from the west coast of Africa, Gold Coast. And then Sankara said, you know what? We need to change the name of the country. And then he renamed his country Burkina Faso. Powerful statement and powerful move. And what a way to decolonize the people instead of teaching them seminars and classes. Because when you say I'm from Burkina Faso, I can tell you, I am an Ivorian. The way people saw the people from Burkina Faso in Ivory Coast as people, doing, those menial jobs. People, when Sankara came, and he said Burkina Faso, and he gave a sense of dignity greater than what people think about to the people of Burkina Faso. The mind and the eyes and the lenses of the people of Ivory Coast and in Africa changed in the way they were looking at the people of Burkina Faso. So this is what Thomas Sankara did. Man of integrity, and also there is no way you're going to say that all African leaders are thieves. If it is a general rule, at least we have some exceptions. And I can give you 3 at least. Oh, we have Nelson Mandela.
That's true.
We have Kwame Nkrumah. And we have also Thomas Sankara. And then of course his fate, you can imagine, because he was deranging, he was not good, for the imperial power. But Thomas Sankara's contribution, everything I just said about what he did, self-sufficiency, self-reliance, what Thomas Sankara did, changing the name of the country, decolonizing the mind of his people, helping them in order to build roads. But one of his greatest achievements that is so important for us, when we talk about Pan-Africanism, he gave the ability to his people to believe in themselves. As one of his quotations is what? Dare to invent your future. So when you see people in a country where you can see poverty, and then all of a sudden they believe in the ability of that leader to transform them, and then they were working and doing his work. And then of course we have that intermediate of the rise to power of Blaise Compaoré, who killed Thomas Sankara and then he was in power for 27 years. But very important piece also is that Sankara was a revolutionary. And remember the sentence, in life and in death. When he was there, of course, he promoted Pan-Africanism. He promoted internationalism. But 27 years when Sankara died and Blaise Compaoré was trying to destroy his legacy, the revolution that took Blaise Compaoré out of power in October 2014, we saw how the people of Burkina Faso, the people's movement, when Blaise wanted to change the constitution, for them to be able, to mobilize the entire nation, to see 1 million people in Ouagadougou rising against Blaise Compaoré, to see people in Koudougou, in Bobo-Dioulasso, in different parts of Burkina Faso, again, they had to reclaim the legacy, the life, the vision of Thomas Sankara. That movement, we can say that it started in Senegal. 2 years before 2014, over there, people's movement, they prevented Wade to change the constitution, and Wade eventually left the power. And then the people in Burkina Faso, the singers, Sans Kaleja, Smokey, and many other people, civil unions, they organized and political leaders, and then claiming Thomas Sankara's spirit. Again, many people said that it was what? The resurrection of Thomas Sankara. So since the victory of the peoples of Burkina Faso against Blaise Compaoré, in order to vindicate Thomas Sankara as a revolutionary in life and in death, we could see different parts of Africa, people claiming the spirit of Thomas Sankara. It looks like Sankara is becoming the Jesus of the Pan-African movement. When Thomas Sankara, and again, when I say that, because he gave his life. When he said, for instance, people can kill me, they cannot kill ideas, I will be gone, but there will be what? 1,000 Sankara that are going to rise. And they rose in 2014, and there were more than 1,000 people in Burkina Faso. And then, when Sankara's spirit today is engulfing on the continent of Africa, people in Congo, people in the Democratic Republic of Congo, people in Gabon, and many other parts of Africa, as people are organizing to try and put an end to the long rulerships of those dictators, they look up to Burkina Faso and they claim the spirit and the vision of Thomas Sankara. And this is what I wanted to share with you. If there are a few other things I can talk about, I will do that. But my last word is this. Pan-Africanism is on the rise. So I said Sankara did it when it was in hibernation, and then 27 years of hibernation, and later on people claimed him 2014. And then today his spirit is engulfing. And then this is how you can see the power of his ideas. And when people reclaimed Sankara, 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, you can see on the continent of Africa how people are organizing. There are some beautiful stories. The election in Nigeria, the election in Benin, the election in Senegal, the elections in different parts of Africa, and people can see that Africans want to take their own destiny to their hands. And then one of the people that are reclaiming is what? Thomas Sankara. Last thing, January 7th, there was a campaign on the continent of Africa and many other capitals in Europe against what? The CFA frame. And those who are doing that, it is in the spirit of Pan-Africanism, reclaiming the legacies of Thomas Sankara and the legacies of Nkrumah, Nelson Mandela, Malcolm X, Dr. King, Patrice Lumumba, and many other African great heroes. Thank you very much for the opportunity. And if you have questions, let me know. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nyaka. Thank you. I would like to thank Dr. Nyaka and introduce Paul Sankara. Before I introduce Paul Sankara, I want to say we have the Consul of Burkina here. He just got here, Monsieur Windraogo Apollinaire. And I would like to thank my uncle too. Diallo, Monsieur Diallo. Diallo. Thank you for coming. Monsieur Sankara, s'il vous plaît.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Okay. Thank you, Yaka. Thank you, the College of Essex, Community College. Thank you for the team that organized this event. In the name of the whole biologic family, Sankara's family, I want to say thank you. Thank you because by doing this event, it shows, I have the convictions that Thomas Sankara didn't sacrifice himself in vain. And as Nyaka said, quoting Thomas' speech, even if you kill me, thousands and thousands of Sankaras will be reborn. And I have the proof, the evidence tonight, this afternoon, that you guys are part of the Sankaras. Thank you. But remembering Thomas Sankara on the month of Black History Month is good. But actually it should be called differently, not Black History Month. Every single day should be Black Day. Because mankind comes from Africa. African and blacks took part of what has been discovered and created in this planet Earth.
Yes, sir.
Regardless of what people may say, like Nicolas Sarkozy, former president in France, African didn't bring any contribution in the development of the human being history.
Even idiots can become president.
There you go. Thank you. I just want to say another thing. Even being in the Knowledge Hub, which is a college, I'm not coming here to lecture. I'm coming to learn and share with you. But I want to say something else. Why? Because Thomas Sankara is part of all of us. And let's have a serious conversation, because we have a lot to do in the US too, especially right now. I didn't name somebody because I don't want to be deported or I don't want trouble. But you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
By the way, how many of you know the history of the king, elephants, and community members? None. Okay, let's talk right quickly about that. So, it was a king who wanted to raise an elephant in a village. And he started raising his elephants, who's going to destroy, elephant by itself is a king among the animals. And being the king of the elephants of the king, that's another plus. Destroying, eating crops, corns, beans, rice, etc. in the fields. And the community were fed up. They said, okay, let's see what we can do. We have to do something. Can destroy our houses, eating the crops, beans, corn, rice, etc. And we have nothing to say about that. One of the community members said, okay, I have an idea. Let's put a bell on the neck of the elephant. Anytime you will get close, so we'll capture the elephant. Oh, that's a great idea. Another one said, but who's going to do that? They didn't find any volunteer. The wise man among the members of the community said, I have another idea. After failing with this proposition, let's go talk to the king about our concern. All right. They did on the normal process, requesting an appointment with the king. It has been accepted. The day of the meeting, who's going to be the spokesman? Nobody. So, this point is just to say that we have to organize, discipline, and speak up. Coming to Sankara's topic, when I have been invited to say something about this great event, I said, okay, let's talk about Thomas Sankara, African leaders and international institutions and industrialized countries like France. As Nyaka already pointed out, a couple of points, Thomas Sankara was born on December 21st, 1949 in Burkina Faso. The Burkina Faso itself is good to remind that geographically is located in the West African part of the continent. Landlocked, surrounded in the northwest by Mali, northeast by Niger, in the southern part by Ivory Coast, Ghana, Togo, and Benin, 4 coastal countries that have access to the sea, as opposed to Burkina, who is a landlocked country. And then you have the 1960s, which is the time of the independence of most of African countries that access to independence, 1960s, except Liberia, created by United States, Ethiopia, who never been colonized. So there is a specific tie between Burkina and Ivory Coast, in a sense that through the colonizer approach, they were going to the landlocked country like Burkina, get some cheap manpower in order to make them work in the plantation, coffee, and bananas, etc., in countries like Ivory Coast. 20 years after, in the 1980s, it was a sort of, Nyaka said it in his presentations, sort of corruption in different governments in African countries. And Sankara was shaped, Thomas Sankara was shaped in his meetings, trainings with the trade unions, the students, and civil society organization movement before getting into power, even before getting into politics. That's why his agenda and visions were pretty clear before getting into power, because there was a long training, a long process of getting a sort of consciousness before ruling the power. His vision was clear and simple: give a new consciousness to the people, doing some social, political realizations. For example, the first time in the country, a new market with the safety and hygiene measure has been built. In the West African countries, that was one of the first time. The first time, they have buses, public buses for population. The first time, women has been appointed in high-level official positions, etc., etc. The environment. But it's also, in terms, the new vision and the approach, how to disconnect and break the influence, the impact of France in, at least in Burkina Faso and West African countries. New Burkina Faso, free, independent, and prosperous one. For example, it used to be automatically the French ambassador who was the dean among the different ambassadors residing in Burkina Faso. With the revolution, they said no. Not in terms of age, but the oldest resident ambassador, African ambassador, will be the dean among the ambassadors. In absence, it will be the non-African ambassador, the oldest one residing in Burkina Faso. Couple of things. It's also the way he wanted to struggle against the corruptions. It used to be a West African Economic Organization, CEAO, in France. And there was this huge scandal of corruptions done by the three top guys. One from Ivory Coast, another one from Mali, and the third one from Senegal. And the presidency of this former organization used to be a turning term. Now, Burkina Faso was at that time president of the former CEAO. And with the government of Thomas Sankara, he said they have to respond to the justice like anybody. They have to go to jail. We have the evidence. So it was a pressure from the three different countries on the government of Thomas, revolutionary government, in order to avoid putting these three thieves in jail. It's happened. Another thing, when Thomas Sankara went to so-called France-Afrique summit in France, he refused to go to the dinner because he has been received by somebody who plotted against him when he was the prime minister, and a coup d'etat has been done at that time in 1983. So it's good to put the context to it. It was at the time of Ronald Reagan in the 80s, François Mitterrand in France, which is was a socialist. For the first time, the socialists came on the power. In Burkina Faso, the government, revolutionary government, thought that the relationship would be quite a little bit different. But as somebody said, in terms of relationship, there is no just interest. There is no relationship. There is no friendship. But the relationship with the revolutionary government under Thomas Sankara was tough also with the international institutions like IMF, International Monetary Fund, World Bank. In the 80s, 90s, they came up with a new approach of development, which is the SAP, Structural Adjustment Plan. What was that? You have to fire people in the public administration. You have to cut the price of oil, sugar, and etc., privatize and such things. It's a suicide. The government of Burkina Faso said, no, we, the one who know what to do for our people, we will determine the best way to develop this country. Because the IMF and World Bank used to just focus on investment and what is profitable on the expenses of the social factors. That was quite opposite with the revolutionary government in Burkina Faso. They said, no, we have the social realities. We're going to mobilize people to work themselves before we get any help coming from overseas. So it's kind of things that makes France and a lot of countries like Ivory Coast, which is the former president, Houphouët-Boigny, who used to be the sort of watchdog of the French interest, at least in the western part of Africa. So the relation was really tense, but the vision, agenda, pretty clear by the revolutionary government, just moving forward. It was 10 years before Mandela liberation, when Sankara was on the power. It was also a self-determination in the relationship, diplomatic relationship with different countries. For example, in the United Nations, Thomas Sankara denounced the invasion of Afghanistan by Soviet Union, but also the aggressions of Grenada Island by the US. Okay. They support French departments like New Caledonia, who wanted to have the independence with the late, rest in peace, Jean-Marie Tjibaou, who was to be the leader of the movement in New Caledonia. It's also supporting the Polisario. Right now, Morocco is coming back in the African Union after 30 years absence, mainly because they want the Polisario to be out of the African Union. That was the conditions. And you have principles in the African Union's statutes saying that no, any African organization or country is welcome to take part of to be member of the organization, but we cannot expose any organization or country because another one is using his money or sort of pressure to obtain that. Non-alignment movement, 1983, that's when Thomas Sankara met Maurice Bishop from Grenada, Fidel Castro, Indira Gandhi, and while he was prime minister, before getting to the power, being a president later on. So this is kind of a situation when Thomas Sankara, with the revolutionary government, really decided to keep up the agenda that they had been laid out with the women, the trade unions, and all the political parties that support the revolutionary movement. But I want to just say that it's also why Thomas Sankara remains an inspiration for a lot of movements, and especially the civil society movement. In 2014, it has been said already, civil society movement, women, students, were fed up with the 27 years regime of the former president in Burkina Faso. So power for the people, power by the people, they experienced that, and indeed, they get rid of the former president. They set up a transitional government. A new government has been elected. Burkina Faso is moving forward with the inspiration and the legacy of Thomas Sankara. I just want to finish with a couple of things. First, the case of Thomas Sankara's assassination still pending in justice. We need to organize, find a way to bring a pressure on any institutions, whether it is in a national level or the local level in Burkina Faso, in order to know the truth and get justice. That's and another thing. I just probably hope that next time I will come here, but I will be at your place, listen to you talking about presenting on Thomas Sankara, on women, on environment, or Thomas Sankara just the man. One last thing, he is not physically anymore with us, but I think the spirit is here, and we have a lot of Sankaras in this family, in this room. So Sankara is not just biologically, it's by the spirit and by the heart. Oh, thank you.
Well, I think we can do a better Essex County College applause than that. We got folks here from Washington, D.C., all the way from we got folks from all over. We got, as a matter of fact, your cousins are here. You said your cousin?
Yes, she's my cousin.
From Botswana. We got folks from all over the place, and we obviously are the ambassadors. So we're pleased to have all the folks we have here. We have faculty in the room. Brother Diallo, I have to say, he was in my shoes before I was in the shoes that I'm in. He was at running the, working to usher the Africana Institute forward, so I give him another round of applause, please. And you know, it's good to see young folks in the audience. We have some very young folks from the Ma'at Shule here in Newark who are young folks studying, so it's great to have them here. And you know, just the idea that we're talking about these contributions to propel Africa and the African people around the world forward, I think is key for us in terms of where we are today. That these discussions, as we were saying, as he's saying, that Thomas Sankara is all over the place, these discussions are popping up all over the place. Not just here at Essex County College, that we look and we see there's discussion going on Saturday in New York. There's a discussion going on on Sunday. There's another one. So there's all these discussions about where people of African descent are today and how do we push the agenda forward. So I don't necessarily think it's a Trump reality. It happens to be a reality, excuse me, of our consciousness moving forward and pulling together all the ideas and the sentiment of the folks around the table, and that there's an ether in the air, and the spirit is high, and that spirit that's high is pushing forward a state of being that we would even have these brothers here today to say that we need to continue the dialogue about the things that we've done in the past, so that we have a clear idea about where we're moving forward. So let's give our guests a round of applause. I want to both, if you can join me up here. We have some nice little gifts for you. The two of you, just want to thank you for taking your time out of and coming to join us here. So we thank you both. So Paul Sankara, the brother of the late Thomas Sankara, give him a round of applause. Dr. Nyaka, let's give him a round of applause, our scholar who's helping us to understand the not only the thriving Pan-African legacy, but the continuous Pan-African legacy. And then, as said, my sister, before we depart here, the sister's been working tirelessly to bring these brothers here, and then also not just these brothers, but we have other things that we've had before, the ambassadors, the consul general, all the folks coming. She's been working to make sure that Burkina Faso has been well represented this year at Essex County College. So let's give Sister Diallo a round of applause, please. And for all of you, I want to thank you and give yourselves a round of applause that we are excited that you all made it here. We know that it takes, we're in the middle of the day having an event, and so sometimes it's difficult for people to come out in the middle of the day, but we thank you all for coming, and know for sure that this is not the last Pan-Africanist conference that we're going to have here. We believe that everything that we do is basically looks at the foundations, has a Pan-Africanist foundation, whether it's our Kwanzaa program, or it's our discussions on African spirituality, which is coming up in March. I thank you on behalf of Dr. Yamba, who is the president of Essex County College, and all the staff and faculty here and the students. We thank you for participating and making what we do for our part as the Africana Institute and Essex County College and African History Month a powerful thing. As a matter of fact, before I say that, I'm going to end with, so I even had people critiquing me using the word African History Month. They want to say, well, no, it's not African History Month, it's African American History Month, or it's Black History Month. And I say, well, what is the root? Where does it come from? And so that African History Month means that we're talking about African American History Month. We're talking about African Caribbean History Month. Right. We're talking about African Southern African History Month. So all of that is inclusive in the process, and I'll continue that debate.